Welcome back to another youth-centered podcast. Very excited to have Steve Boudreau, recently named head coach at Tewksbury High School. We had him about a year ago talking about culture and building a team. And so we're entitling this one, Lessons from the Road, Building a Program 1 Year Later. So first of all, I want to thank Steve for coming on the Youth-Centered podcast.
Well, Rick, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back on the Youth Center podcast. I enjoy listening, I enjoy learning, and hopefully I can provide some valuable insight here on the Lessons from the Road podcast.
All right. So why don't you do a little bit of, a lot of people that will be listening to this know your history and your bio, but let's for maybe the one or two people that maybe not know who Steve Boudreau is, let's give that little bio.
Sure. So I grew up in North Andover. That's obviously the tie that I have to the Youth Center, and I had a great experience growing up in North Andover Public Schools. Went to Atkinson Elementary, North Andover Middle School, and then through the high school. And I think the theme when I think about my experience growing up is I was just lucky to be surrounded by supportive teachers, supportive families, supportive coaches that really kind of helped shape who I am. Played both basketball and football in high school. And graduated in 2008 from North Andover High School. Decided to go to Keene State College, where I continued to play basketball. Also met my wife there. I better mention her, or I might be getting the hairy eyeball at the end of the night. Played basketball there, as I said, and then graduated in 2012. After college, I decided I kind of wanted to go down the road of coaching. I wanted to pursue that, and Rob Colbert, who was the head coach at the time at Keene State, kind of encouraged me to chase that dream. So I stayed on for 3 years at Keene State College as an assistant coach, as the recruiting coordinator, which really just kind of helped me professionally, helped me on the floor coaching, how to deal with people. That was a really influential 3 years for me as more of a learner than anything else. And then I would probably say I was at a crossroads, whether to continue to chase the coaching dream, or kind of pivot my career and then go into something different. And what I ended up doing was it was kind of the best of both worlds. I ended up pursuing a career in teaching, and I got a job at Up Academy Leonard as a science teacher the first year, teaching 6th grade science in Lawrence, Massachusetts. And I stayed there for 4 years working in a variety of different roles. I spent a year teaching science, I spent 2 years teaching health, and then my final year I taught physical education. But the people that I worked with and the students that I got to work with, I think it was a special time. It was a dedicated group of teachers, it was a dedicated group of students who really pushed me to be the best that I could be. And so I kind of I hold those 4 years as kind of a special place in my heart, and watching the students overcome constant adversity, the grit that they kind of possessed, in the effort that they showed every single day. In 2019, I moved districts from Lawrence to Tewksbury. I was hired as a 5th and 6th grade physical education teacher, and I am currently in my 2nd year as a teacher there at the Ryan School, and a basketball coach. So that's kind of who I am. I should probably also mention I'm an avid Boston sports fan, and a below average golfer.
Well, we're definitely going to have to levy a fine. He did not mention that he is one of the main people in the BST training program, along with yours truly and Matt Medeiros, but you also have been involved very heavily with training kids outside of the coaching thing. So when we first had you on the podcast last year to talk a little bit about team building and culture, your role was an assistant coach. In the past year, that has gone from being an assistant varsity coach to this year being an associate head coach, with pretty much having the full reins of the program. And then obviously, as I said earlier, last week you were named the newest head coach in Tewksbury basketball. So take us through kind of how those roles evolved in a matter of 2 years.
So when I came to Tewksbury, Coach Bradley and I had spoken, and it was clear that I was very interested in kind of getting on staff. And it was also clear that he was looking for someone to come on and have a major role. So it was kind of a win-win. As an assistant, I was involved and heavily involved in every aspect, planning practice, scouting reports, getting to know guys, etc. As it translated, and had a great first year, and I think we made so much growth in my first year in Tewksbury, and I don't know if necessarily the results show it, but I think from a culture standpoint, I think from a preparation standpoint, from how we practiced, we made major strides. I think probably more behind the scenes that I was really excited about. We made more growth that I probably could have ever imagined in those couple of months. This year, moved up as the associate head coach, and now obviously transitioning into the head coach role. So I would say that this year, I think I just had a better pulse on the program. I was much more involved this year with our freshman team, with our JV team. I was able to kind of dedicate more time to that. And then I was a step ahead in the sense of I knew the roster that we had coming back. I knew the new players that moved from the JV up to the varsity. So I think I was able to kind of tailor my approach to the group that we had coming back, rather than year one kind of coming in blind.
Okay. So when you finished your first year as an assistant, 1920, you actually had some good wins, and you had some really rough, kind of tough losses. And when the season ended, it ended with no tournament berth. But due to the MIA rule, you were allowed to continue to work with your kids until basically the winter season was over. What was your goal in those couple of weeks? And then we ran into this thing called the global pandemic. But what was your goal at that point, at the end of the season, to continue doing what you had hoped to do?
Well, there were two goals. The first goal was we wanted to continue creating a competitive environment. And we had those 2 to 3 weeks that we could still be on the floor with our players. And we wanted to maximize the time that we had that we could have with our players. So I think number one was create that competitive environment. Number two was, as you said, Rick, I thought we had a lot of games where we lost by 3 points, or lost at the last 3 minutes of the game, 4 minutes of the game, 1 possession loss, 2 possession loss. So the whole idea of those 3 weeks, we called it phase one, and it was phase one of the off season, and the whole goal was finish. Every single thing we did was we talked about finishing. Whether it's finishing a shooting drill, finishing a sprint, finishing a pickup game, finishing with a free throw. Everything was built around that. And we ended up probably, before the pandemic, we probably had 10 to 12 workouts. We had great attendance. And I thought we accomplished, we were moving the needle. We were moving forward, creating that environment, and finishing. And that was our, I thought we had to kind of get over that hump before we could move forward.
Yeah, for sure. So then the global pandemic hits, totally blows us all away, pretty much shuts everything down, right? So there's no spring leagues, there's no spring AAU. Summer leagues get thrown out for pretty much people in this area, although some schools were actually able to go over the border to New Hampshire. AAU basically starts late. So you had just had so much excitement about building your team and building your culture. What were some of the things that you tried to do strategy-wise to keep the kids involved during a global pandemic in basically your first year kind of taking the reins? So what was the spring and the summer like for Tewksbury basketball under you?
Yeah, like any coach, I think that was an extremely frustrating time. I think it was tough for coaches with kind of the lack of contact or communication that we could kind of have with players. And then obviously players, it was really tough because they were not able to get into gyms, right? And they were shut down for a long period of time. So I think that was one of the tough parts. I think the other thing was we had made this progress, and then the biggest hurdle was not being able to build on the progress that we had just made. And then you kind of mix in this whole idea of the new normal and uncharted territory and this pandemic that I don't know if any of us knew how to handle. So I think it quickly, as a staff, we kind of quickly had to shift from skill development and finishing to kind of checking in and making sure that our players, were doing okay mentally. Over the next few months, we spent some time on Zoom together. We did a couple different film session things. We had guys look at different parts of the season and areas of growth and areas of strength. And then one thing that I tried to do is I heard Mike Bray in the month of March at one of the NABC clinics, and he told his players at Notre Dame they were not allowed to text him. If they wanted to talk to him, they had to pick up the phone and call And I didn't implement that rule necessarily, but I tried to make it a point to be on the phone a lot more with our players, and having real verbal conversations instead of just over the text.
Yeah, and in talking to you and your players, what I love to hear as a culture guy, I love that the relationships were being built. There was the connection. There wasn't like, oh, I haven't heard from my coach in 3 months or something like that. So at the end of the summer, we get a little optimistic, right? School may or may not go back. Hybrid method, full remote or full schooling, we're not 100% sure. MIA takes a look at, starting from fall sports with obviously restrictions. And then you're allowed to start working with your guys. Now again, basketball's not allowed per se in Massachusetts at that point. Everything's skill development, cardio, whatever it means to kind of get the kids in shape or whatever. I loved how you put a plan together by grabbing those kids that weren't playing any kind of fall sport, and you took it old school, outside. So what was the fall like?
Yeah, so I talked about when our season ended in year one, and the phase was kind of built around finishing, and I think in the fall it was built around commitment, right? Continuing to build that commitment to Tewksbury basketball. And we couldn't go in the gym, right? It wasn't pretty. A lot of times we were outside this fall, and I'll expand on kind of our plan and what we got accomplished in the fall. But it was cold. Guys are working out in sweatshirts. Guys are working out in swirling winds. Guys are frustrated. They're shooting the balls literally moving 2 to 3 feet to the right or the left. The wind's blowing the basketball. But I thought guys committed, and it was, the tough part was it was all non-contact. We were in masks. We had to stay 6 feet apart. Guys had to bring their own basketball. But I thought the work that we were able to get done, we were back together, right? And we were enjoying being around each other. Thought we had some fun. And then it was the work that we did, whether it was getting a lot of reps, whether it was how we're going to move on penetration, how we're going to run in transition, kind of creating snapshots of what we wanted to work on when we did get to full contact. And then the final piece was when we did get into the gym, I won't forget this. It was almost like nostalgic, right? It was almost emotional when we did finally get into the gym after spending 15 workouts outside in the cold. When we got into the gym, I know it made me more appreciative, and I think it made our guys more appreciative too.
Yeah, I think you had a really good plan. I think you actually followed through with it, and you did not let the elements prevent you from doing it. As we get to the late fall, MIA is working really hard. DESE, governor's office, trying to figure out if there's going to be winter sports, and we get optimistically excited that something's going to take place. Obviously going to be some restrictions, which in hindsight, I think we'll look back at this and say, probably didn't need to do as many of the restrictions as we did, but there is hope for a basketball league. And your AD, one of the best in the business, by the way, Ronnie Druin, he's one of the lead people in pulling off basketball in the MVC. And our plan was very similar to most of the other leagues, but talk to us a little bit about what the MVC plan was to operate basketball this year.
So the MVC plan was a 12-game season. And it was unique. You would play kind of like a doubleheader. You'd play the same team twice in that week. It was a little different. I felt once we got between the lines, it felt very normal. But I think the logistics were a little different, and I thought our players did a really good job of adapting. Things like they had to fill out a COVID form before 2 o'clock every day, which was essentially a wellness check. We had temperature checks when they got into the building. Obviously, we were in masks. We didn't have a place to really meet. We didn't have a locker room. So that was kind of the plan in terms of logistics, and then playing the same team twice in a week.
Yeah, and then obviously we finished with something pretty cool with the MVC Cup. So we had a season, and as I tell people, you know, you can judge how it was successful, wins and losses and things, but major win, and kudos to all of my peers that are coaching this winter. You actually did it. You pulled off some kind of a season, not exactly what we wanted, but major kudos to getting the job done. So as the season starts, let's get back more to the culture, team building stuff. You're now the associate head coach, but you've got full reins. Tommy Bradley has kind of basically said, you're the guy. You're running the practices. You're doing the game management. You're implementing kind of your feeling, because the plan is in place that you will take over the following year. So what were some of the things that you implemented that may have been different? I know you're going to talk a little bit about the challenge that you did when you had a shutdown. So let's talk a little bit about the season per se and some of the things you implemented in, again, the craziest of times.
Sure. So we had some ideas and challenges that we wanted to accomplish, right, through an uncharted territory type of season. So we implemented some different things, and I'll just kind of spitball. The first thing was, after our third day of practice, we had a positive COVID-19 test. So our program was shut down for essentially 7 to 10 days. So as a coaching staff, we're scrambling. How are we going to A, keep our guys in shape, and B, keep our guys engaged over that period of time? So we came up with something that it was really successful, and we called it accountability pods. And these were pods that were made up of 3 to 4 people in our team, and they were responsible for. It was all through Google Classroom on a Google Doc, and they were responsible for logging their own workouts in this document, and then holding their other pod members accountable for what they did, and we set kind of standards of the expectation for each day. And again, workouts look different, right? Some guys had access to a hoop outside of the backyard. Some guys were quarantined in the basement, right? And they had to really be creative with kind of what they were going to do with during or throughout the accountability pod timeline. But I thought that was something that we really celebrated, and I thought that really pushed our culture forward. We were able to be productive during a shutdown.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about some of the other things you implemented. You and I talked a lot about relationship building, and part of what's impressive is you did some kind of unique things in terms of connecting with your kids through individual film sessions, some group sessions, just obviously meeting with your players. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think as a coach, I think one of the most important things is I wanted to be available. If a player wanted to watch film with me, I wanted to make sure that I was carving out that time to give that player that attention. Because if they reached out to me, it means it's really important to them. So, for example, if a guy reached out to me for skill development, right, or maybe looking at a shot, or looking at this, or looking at that, I wanted to be there for our players. So we did. There were 2 players in particular that I had individual film sessions with, almost once to twice a week. And with Huddle, you can really break down, right? We'd look at field goals attempted, right? We'd talk about. Is that a good shot? Is that a great shot? Where can you improve in that area? We'd look at different. We usually always looked at the turnovers that player committed and where we can make strides. So, and the greatest thing about those film sessions, whether it was small group or whether it was individual, is it's building a player to coach relationship, right? It's building trust. And our players were empowered to be able to say to me, "Hey, coach, I disagree with you. I think this was a great shot." And building that kind of two-way relationship, whether it was in the film room, whether it was on the practice floor, I think goes a long way in developing a program.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so you obviously know that I've been doing culture workshops for high school basketball teams for a number of years now. You contract with me and say, "Hey, I want you to come down to Tewksbury, run a workshop." And as a lot of people know, that the workshop, 2.5 hours, an initial workshop, then I come back during the year. What did that workshop do or not do for you building a culture? I really enjoyed coming to Tewksbury. What was the impact on the coaches and the players?
Well, I think during the season, it's great to bring in people that might have a different voice, right, and keep things fresh. Rick, we brought you in for our culture workshop. We had Jeff Nelson come in to do a shooting workshop with our players. And I think, but when I look at the culture workshop, I think the greatest thing about those 2.5 hours is it highlights that this is bigger than basketball. It was what I would call mental skill building for coaches, for players. And I think one of the things that I'm uncomfortable almost in the environment, because it is such a learning environment. It is a vulnerable environment. You have to share things with players, with your other coaches, that might be really tough to share. But I think the ultimate goal of it is to lead to growth for you as an individual, and then it leads to growth for your team.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the actual workshop. I remember getting a phone call from you about the actual impact. Can you talk a little bit more about how it would actually, take your team to a different level as far as, kids being honest about things they're failing and everything else?
Sure. So I think a few things stick out that are kind of ingrained in me when I think about those 2.5 hours. The first thing was we did an activity called What is Your Why? And where players had an index card and they had to identify why they play the game. And the answers, and I'm sure all the teams that you worked with, Rick, had great answers. But our guys, it was really neat to see the different side of them. On a personal level, some players play for the town of Tewksbury. Some players would play for their parents. Some players would play for all different reasons, proving someone wrong or this or that. So that was I thought that was a really great, almost icebreaker to kind of get us into an environment where we could push each other. The second thing was you challenge us to come up with team standards. You challenge us to come up with program pillars. And we kind of brainstormed during that, and then we were able to kind of harden those pillars and those standards after the fact. And then the third thing was the implementation of the accountability circle, where at the end of practice, guys would stand in a circle, and it was player-led. And anybody could speak. They could identify the positives from practice, and it had to be specific to a teammate. Couldn't be generic. It had to be specific. Or they could identify areas of growth for that player. And I think this was probably the hardest thing for me, was it forced me to be quiet and shut up, because it was player-led. And I think that was a good thing. And I think teams with great culture are player-led, and you have great leadership from players 1 to 12, 1 to 13, 1 to 14. The voice can't always come from the coach, and this created an avenue for players to be able to accomplish that.
Yeah, when we put in and implemented, the accountability circle, it was tough for someone like you who likes to respond to every comment that's said, and we kind of put the muzzle on you and not allow you to do it. And I think that was a huge advantage for your team going forward. Would you care to share to our listeners some of your pillars and standards that you talked about?
Sure. So our pillars are 3 questions that we ask our guys at the end of each practice or at the beginning of practice. And our pillars are, number 1, did everything matter? Number 2, did we get 1% better? And that applies to everything, film room, meeting room, etc. And then number 3, did we practice like champions, right? If we want to if we're going to take this program to where I think it can be, again, we have a long way to go, and we're just starting this journey, but we have to practice and prepare like a championship team would. Our standards, and I have them here. Number 1, we'll remember our why and treat each practice and game like it is our last. The other interesting thing about our standards is our players voted on these standards, and you can kind of tell how impactful that What is Your Why activity was, because it turned out to be one of our standards. The second standard are we will hold each other accountable on and off the court. And number 3, we will give maximum effort in every practice, drill, meeting, and game. And these are kind of things that I want our program to live by, these pillars and these standards. And at the end of the day, if you can say, yes, everything mattered, yes, we got 1% better, yes, we practiced like champions, I think we're on the path to success.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was all great. Last thing you kind of implemented was social media, and obviously someone that really believes my game's the Twitter game, obviously, but I believe that there are some basketball programs that really take advantage of the social media. There's people that are in middle of the road, then there's some people that don't take advantage of it all. My guy Faye's over in Andover, I love him, man. He's actually got his Twitter game going now, great. And obviously our good friend Kristen McDonald down at Norwood, she's a must follow. I love some of the stuff that she's posted, and it really kind of builds a lot of culture with her kids. What did you do in terms of the social media piece?
So our number one goal in social media was to create a buzz, right? We wanted to create a buzz about Tewksbury basketball, and whether it was highlighting, what our guys did that day or that game, or previewing a game with a picture of our players or the game time, etc. We wanted to create a buzz and show people on social media, show people in Tewksbury, show people all over that this is something that's really important, and it matters to us. And I think it does have. I think it can really have a positive effect on your players. And as I'll talk a little bit about when we get into kind of the development of our youth players, don't kid yourself. I think kids growing up, kind of can see our Twitter account and see hopefully the positive things that we're doing, and hopefully they grow up wanting to be a Tewksbury basketball player.
Yeah, good stuff. We always talk about, in terms of development, kids got to get better, that there's a big difference between interest and commitment. But I think what's missed a lot is what are you coaches doing for professional development? What are you doing to get better this year, next year? So what was your professional development during the craziest of years of a global pandemic?
So the cool thing about, the neat thing about the pandemic was it allowed a lot of coaches to take a step back and kind of reevaluate where they're at. There were a lot of different opportunities professional developmentally. Again, you have high major college coaches, NBA coaches, everyone shut down. So there were a lot of different opportunities to learn from different guys. Guys were doing Zoom clinics that you could sign up for and jump on. And that was really, really helpful. I spent a lot of time in March and April, finding guys that I was interested in learning about, whether it be, the Eastern Michigan 2-3 zone, whether it be the Merrimack zone, whether it be the Swarthmore motion offense, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mike Bray talking about how he connects with his players. So there were a lot of different things on that level where I was a viewer. And then the second thing, and Rick, you and I kind of worked in cahoots on what is now kind of grown into the fireside chat, which was, and it's coming back at the end of March. But it was a 90-minute, essentially professional development opportunity for coaches that happened every single week. And there was a different topic, a different speaker each week. And I can honestly say that through those, I don't know what it was, 25, 30 sessions that we had, it was probably the best professional development that I've ever taken part in. From the new ideas, from the different perspectives, from coaches kind of challenging each other's thinking. And ultimately, it was like a big support group, right? Where we could support each other, but also, on a deeper level, learn from each other.
Yeah, I mean, that fireside chat's just at a whole different level now. My man Hank Smith, OKC Thunder scout, and I started this 11 years ago, and it was literally sitting around a fire, whether it be a fireplace, a fire pit, a lamp, basically talking hoops with some really great basketball folks. Is now grown into this thing which is going to continue again starting at the end of March. We got 67 coaches that were involved with it last year, 20 to 30 on a weekly basis. And again, if anyone's interested in jumping on our fireside chat, reach out to me. We'll get you on. It's all going to be good stuff.
The other thing, as a young coach and obviously as a first-time head coach, I think being with a lot of different successful coaches, there were two things I learned. Number one, there are so many different successful coaches that do it so many different ways. There are many different ways to be a great coach from an X and O standpoint and from a leadership standpoint. And the second thing was, I learned that a lot of these successful coaches, whether it be Paul Conley, Kristen McDonald, etc., John McVay, there are no magic answers, right? There's not a magic formula to coaching, and a lot of the things that we were doing, it almost validated a lot of things that we were doing with some of these great coaches, which as a young coach, I think also instilled belief in myself that we are doing a lot of the right things and continuing to do those.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so you ended this year and you had a number of returning main players that were seniors. You had some very high expectations. I think you met some of those expectations and you didn't meet some of those expectations. How is your frustration level with that in terms of, again, you're still trying to grow a program?
Well, ultimately basketball is a results business, right? And when you work hard at something, and your players work hard at something, and you don't get the result that you want, that can be a difficult thing to cope with. So we finished our year 5-7. We had some ups, we had some downs. We lost our last 2 games, which is still eating at me as I sit here today. But there were some things that I think we can build on. We had 5 Merrimack Valley wins this year, which is more than what we had last year in a 20-game season. We went 4-1 in the second matchup, or the second time we played a team. So that means to me, right, beating a team 4 out of 5 times in the second matchup tells me that our players believe in what we're doing. It means that we're making adjustments that are helping put our players in a position to be successful. So I think there are a lot of things that we can build on. Did we meet every expectation that I think we all had? No. Are we moving in the right direction? Yes. We used Jeff Hafley, who's the football coach at Boston College right now. He had a great line, and he talks about in year 1, his team had to learn how to believe, right? Believe in what we were doing, and then in year 2, you got to learn how to win. And I don't know if we've accomplished year 2. I think we believe. I don't know if we're there in terms of we know how to win, we know how to finish games from a coach and from players, but I know that we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're all raw as we talk about that on the fireside chat an awful lot. As you're building your program, are there programs maybe at the high school, college, or even the pro level that you see some things that culture-wise that you'd like to model after these individuals or these teams?
So, the first thing is you want to talk about someone who knows how to model their brand on Twitter. The positive enthusiasm out of the Arkansas basketball team right now with Eric Musselman is pretty incredible, and I think the enthusiasm around his program and it is absolutely contagious to watch on Twitter. I can only imagine being a part of it. That's something that I think we can continue, or I want to continue. I want to do more of it. I want to have more positive enthusiasm, not just me, but everyone involved around Tewksbury basketball. I want that juice, that emotion, that passion, just like you see at Arkansas. We lost to Central Catholic. We got thumped pretty good the second time we played them, and I remember sitting on the bench or at the end of the fourth quarter and seeing their team cheering on maybe that second group or that third group that was in the game, and I think teams like that, and situations like that are things that we can do better, right? Being a great teammate on the bench, being a great teammate when you're winning, being a great teammate when you're losing. I think that's super important. And then I think the third thing is we talked a lot about this, celebrating each other's success, and we even kind of tapped into Buddhism and this word mudita, all around celebrating each other and being happy for your teammate. And I want to I want that to be a staple of Tewksbury basketball, right? And Rick on the fireside chat, Jeff DePelto talks about one of his team rules. I think he has 2 or 3 team rules, and one of them is point to the passer. And there's, you score, you point to the passer. And what a neat thing, right? What an unselfish, what a selfless act to point to the guy that got you the ball. And I just think that's another example of something that we can really model after, being a selfless program and rooting for each other.
For sure. All right, so it's not just 4 years at the high school in that program. You've got to develop relationships. What are you doing with the young kids in Tewksbury, at least modeling a relationships, them getting to know you, so that eventually all these young kids in Tewksbury want to be a future Tewksbury resident?
So the way that the Tewksbury public schools are set up is there is a upper elementary school, 5th and 6th grade, and every single 5th and 6th grader comes to the Ryan school. And I, as a physical education teacher, I get to teach every single kid that comes through that school. So if I'm doing my job as a teacher, I should have built-in relationships with those 5th grade students, those 6th grade students. They should leave 6th grade and go to the Wynn Middle School, and they should know me. They should know what I'm about. They should know who I am. So hopefully, that's really going to help propel the youth movement in terms of basketball in Tewksbury. As I said earlier, I want kids to grow up wanting to wear the Tewksbury basketball uniform, just like I grew up wanting to wear the North Andover uniform. I want them to, as we use on social media, I want them to represent the T. And I have a platform and a responsibility to do that, not only in the classroom, but also on the basketball court now as a coach in Tewksbury. I think I want the young kids in Tewksbury to see me as someone who cares about them, someone who's passionate about basketball, passionate about getting to know them and having a relationship with them, and then somebody that is extremely competitive and has a will to win.
There's a lot of obstacles in building a culture, and you work for as I said earlier, Ronnie Druin, one of the top ADs in the MVC. MVC has great ADs. My buddy Matt Curran over at Methuen. In building the culture, how important is it for you to have a really good working relationship with your athletic director?
Yeah, so Mr. Druin is extremely supportive. He's a great communicator. He's a straight shooter. He's going to give me honest feedback, on what he sees. And then I think he's also, been an extremely successful baseball coach in Tewksbury, right? So he's someone that I've kind of leaned on to see how he got his program off the ground. How did he get to the level of success that he was at? He was also a physical education teacher at the Ryan School. How did he use that as kind of leverage to build really strong relationships and build great baseball players in the town? So he's someone that I'm really lucky to work for, and I'm excited to continue that relationship.
For sure. Another obstacle, which also can be a benefit too, is obviously parents are a major part of high school sports. How would you describe Coach Boudreau's style in dealing with parents?
Well, I think dealing with parents can be a little tricky. I think I like to be upfront with them, and B, and I think we can do a better job at this, right? I think hopefully a more normal year next year. I think we can do a better job being upfront and communicating with them. But I think there are. I'd probably group it into 3 different categories. The first thing is the person, right? We are, parents have obviously an invested interest in their kid, and so do I as a coach. So I want to encourage parents of our program if there's something going on in their son's life, I want to know about it, and I want to be able to help them persevere through any challenges as a person. That's important. As we kind of shift to playing time, I don't know if I'm super interested in having a conversation with a parent regarding their son's playing time, just because as a coach, I'm doing everything in my power, and we as a staff are doing everything in our power to maximize the potential of each player, and then maximize the development of our team. And we're also in the thick of it each day, right? So I'd much rather a kid, with a playing time issue come to me. We can have an honest conversation rather than a parent who's not there all the time. And then I think the third thing, and we focused on this a lot this year, is providing updates to parents. About whether it's this year, a lot of it was viewing information, how to watch our games on YouTube, odds and ends, updates. Here are the links for the Merrimack Valley of how to watch other games. Thanking them for persevering through a difficult situation. So I think those three things I think are kind of how we look at dealing with parents. Number one, the person. And I'll do anything for any player in our program. Number two, playing time. Not super interested in talking to the parent, really interested in talking to the player. And then three, providing a summary or updates to parents about how we are operating as a program.
So, last year assistant coach, this year associate head coach, as of this week head coach. What would you say to Coach Boudreau now that you wish you had maybe known 2 years ago when you first started with Tewksbury?
Well, I think over the last 2 years, I've really had to think about kind of the core values of me as a coach and coaching with conviction, right? Really believing in yourself and believing in your players, believing in your town. Because as I look at the town of Tewksbury and as I look at myself as a coach, right now I have a really high belief and really high confidence level in what we can accomplish. And I'll be honest, the first time I coached Tewksbury in a fall league game in the fall of 19, I left scratching my head saying, geez, I don't know. But now, as we've progressed, I have an I'm extremely motivated, right, to try to continue to push this thing forward and get to the top of the mountain because I believe in myself, I believe in the town, and I believe in our program.
Yeah, really good. Talking this week with very successful Newton South head coach Stevie Matthews, another great coach from our fireside chat. Stevie's finishing his third year at Newton South, and we were talking about, and you've heard me say this a lot, it takes really 3 to 5 years to build a program once you get named head coach. Your situation a little bit different in terms of as an associate head coach, you were able to start that. Where would you say Tewksbury basketball is in the terms of, kind of rebuilding it?
Well, I'd say we're on the right track. I think we've had an interesting 2 years where we've tasted success. We've had some really good wins. We've had some really bright spots, but we just haven't done it consistently. So I think the good thing is the players in our program, or even the young players coming up, have seen that when we do things the right way, we have the ability to be successful. Now we have to make that consistent. I think we are continuing to work on, creating a competitive atmosphere every single day. Taking this one day at a time, one rep at a time, living in the moment, and continuing to promote commitment to basketball every single day.
Yeah, for sure. You graduate 5 or 6 seniors this year. You know how I feel about gratitude and appreciation. What'd you say to those guys when you wrapped it all up this year?
Well, every time we would finish practice or a film session or anything, I would use the same three lines. I tell them I care about them, the whole team. I tell them I'm proud of them, and I tell them I love them. And that will remain for those 6 seniors for as long as they live. I hope that when we look back on these 6 seniors, we can say that they were the building blocks of our future. They're always part of our program, no matter what. I wish them the best of luck in the next chapter of their life, and I hope that they know that our relationship goes beyond basketball. Ryan Rometto, Kalualu, those guys are in the middle of their football season right now, and I'm gonna root like hell for them. When Brady Egan was playing soccer in the fall, I was rooting for him. And I hope they know that no matter what, whether it's athletics, whether it's school, whether it's anything that happens in their life, I hope they would know that I'd do anything for them.
Yeah, I actually think they really do. All right, so you had your exit interviews, which is another big important thing in building a culture. I really think that coaches that don't do exit interviews are really missing the boat. You had your individual meetings, you had your group meeting. Now it comes on you. What are you going to do to get better this season?
Sure. So I think I think there's a twofold. The first thing is looking at X and O stuff, right? Where did we succeed this year? Where can we improve our personnel that comes back? What's going to put them in? What's going to set them up for success? So I think there's an X and O component where, as a staff, we'll do a pretty large review and hopefully come up with solutions. And then I think the other part of it, right, is building relationships and for me, learning more about leadership and how am I going to be the best leader that I can be, and how am I going to develop those relationships and develop. I think watching film's a great tool of our own team and then of others. I think the fireside chat, I'm excited to get back onto that and continue my professional development. I want to learn from mistakes that I've made, whether it's in game, whether it's out of game, whether it's in practice. And then I think continuing to believe in the vision, believe in myself, believe in Tewksbury basketball.
Awesome. All right, we can't let you go without, we do a little rip off on the Illustrator here. We got some questions for you around 10. Answer it as quickly as you can. They're not one-word answers. Tell us what you mean about it if you want, or they can be one-word answers. So, good friend of the fireside chat, ESPN's Fran Fraschilla, often uses this line. Used it the other night in the West Virginia Baylor game. Great game, by the way. Is it about the Jimmies and the Joes or the X and the O's?
This is a pretty easy one for me. It's the Jimmies and the Joes. I think when it comes down to it, coaching is about developing people, right? And you can't fool kids. I learned this from you, Rick, right? You can't fool kids. You got to tell them the truth. And I guess when I look at like the mentors that I've had in my life, my high school coach Mike McVeigh, my college coach Rob Colbert, Bert Hamill, Rick Gorman. I don't remember the X and O's, right? I don't remember Coach McVeigh's what he's drawn up, in a timeout. But I do remember how he made me feel, right? I do remember how he pushed me. I do remember how he pushed me to be the best that I could be. So I think first and foremost, players need to believe in themselves. They got to believe in the coach. They got to believe in the system. They got to be able to trust each other. And X and O's don't matter, right, unless you have the Jimmies and the Joes and you have that foundation.
All right, finish the famous Fenos Dembo line. You can't yell at a kid until
you love them. And I think you got to earn that love, right? You got to earn that trust. You got to earn that relationship. You have to be authentic. You have to be genuine for a kid to trust you. But what's it? You can't yell at a kid, right? If they don't love them, a lot of times the message will go in one ear and out the other. Once you love them, I think you can grow together.
I tell you, if you'd gotten that one wrong, you'd be running sprints downstairs. All right, next one. 10 seconds left in the game. Tewksbury, tie game. They get the rebound, defensive rebound. Got to go the length of the court. Clock is ticking. You calling a timeout, or you playing through?
So again, I think it's all situational, but we want to push the basketball, right? We want to push the basketball. We want to get the defense on their heels and search. We talk a lot about in our offense searching for a great shot, and it's no different in a tie game with 10 seconds left. We want to search for a great shot for our team, and that's what we do. I would hope or I would be excited to have a timeout in my back pocket in case we do get tied up or it doesn't look like we have that great opportunity to get a good shot off. But first, I want to push the ball and get a great shot without calling a timeout and letting the defense set up.
Nice. Another one of my pet peeves, one of your best players picks up his second foul with 4 minutes left in the half. We playing him or we sitting him?
I'm playing him. Again, I think a lot of this is situational, right? If you're up 10, maybe you try to ride him a little bit more on the bench. If you are in a close game or you're down a few points, I think now the urgency becomes, you have to go back to him. I also think it's important to practice those things. I think your players have to, during games, have to be able to say, oh, we've practiced this, right? Or, oh, we've done this. So a lot of times in practice, we have one guy who this would happen a lot to him, and we literally would be calling fouls in practice, say, hey, that's your second, right? You pick up another one, you're done for the half, or whatever the case may be. But I think you got to play him. I think it's situational, and I think you have to practice it.
Nice. All right, one word answer on this. Beige or dark color pants?
Dark. I'd be running sprints again, Rick.
The numbers don't lie, people. The numbers don't lie. All right, favorite college coach in building a team?
I spoke about him a little bit earlier on social media, but
Is it the Muss?
It's the Muss bus. Yeah, it's Eric Musselman. I think, I want to say this is his second or third year at Arkansas. He did it at Nevada, and he's doing it at Arkansas, and he's doing it with will. He's doing it with excitement. He's doing it with passion. Obviously, he's an excellent coach. And you can see, obviously, at the college level, you're recruiting. You can see recruits being drawn to Arkansas because one of the main reasons is because of him.
Yeah, for sure. Just do me a favor and keep your shirt on, though, all right? All right, favorite college coach when it comes to X and O's?
It's a good one. It's a really good one. You got me between a couple of guys here. Right now, Leonard Hamilton at Florida State's doing a great job. I think he's, again, he's a guy who took over a program, and he lets his guys go, but they're also disciplined and do things the right way.
Best Buddha pregame motivation at the Romano?
Interesting. We used a couple different tactics this year. We put a real emphasis on starting fast in the first 5 minutes of the game, and we talked a lot about winning the warm-up, which is something, again, I stole from the Fireside Chat. Take more shots than your opponent, be more connected than the other team. So we emphasized a lot at the end of our pregame, really getting guys going, winning the warm-up, and then hopefully winning the first 5 minutes is what we talked about a lot. We showed, and again, I stole this from my high school coach. Did this when we were a high school football coach. Did this. We watched the 9th round of Mickey Ward, Arturo Gotti, and if you watch those two guys, that's two just warriors just going at it. And that night, our guys were ready to go.
All right, 2 more questions. This was submitted by all of the Zebras in the Merrimack Valley Conference. Do you know what the dimensions of the coach's box is? No. If Richie Napolitano or Kevin Butler want to, we'll see.
I
think most people are impressed with your Sean McVay impersonation when you actually sprinted the entire sideline to pump up a kid. So they would like you to stay in the coach's box.
All right, fair enough.
All right, last question. What present NBA player are you starting the Buddha franchise with?
Jeez, good one. Really good one.
They're all good.
George Niang, give me the Merrimack Valley product.
Pride of the Merrimack Valley. Big G's going to love that answer.
Big G's going to love it. So it's been fun to watch George at obviously Iowa State and now having an extremely amount of success with the Utah Jazz. So I'm going with the MVC product, George Niang.
I love it. And make sure Georgie knows. All right, Buddha, thanks very much for coming to continue this conversation on culture and team building on a sports team. I think it was really good, and you brought a lot of stuff here. There was a lot of people that can take nuggets from this, just like we take nuggets every Wednesday night on the Fireside Chat. So thanks again for coming on the You Centered podcast.
Rick, I appreciate the platform. I'm thrilled and excited to continue the work at Tewksbury. And as I finished it last year, and if there are new listeners, I think this is an extremely important point. If you want to see great culture, come down and spend a day at the North Andover Youth Center.
Actually, thanks. I do want to thank again Steve Boudreau. Thank you for the great feedback on last week's podcast with the girls from the Black Student Union at the high school. Phenomenal group of girls came in and talked about what they're doing with their platform. Next week we have representatives from the North Andover High School Muslim Club coming in to talk to us about some of the initiatives they're doing. Really good stuff. And then we're going to start a 6-part series, which I am going to be bringing in one person each week, and it's part of what we're calling Savage Leadership. We're going to be bringing in 6 people along with myself to really talk about what real leadership is. So I hope you'll tune into that. So as we finish every podcast, we always say too much passion is never enough passion.